Shall we get started in a bit? We're waiting for the new Muslim class to finish up in the back. All right, inshallah, we get started here. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم ينفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزد علما لكريم رب العالمين اللهم نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء لكل داء آمين رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah bless all of you. We're continuing on our session or a series on the rise of Salahuddin Al-Ayyubi. Rahimahullah. We are on our second session here. Even today, we won't even start his life yet because it's called The Rise. So we need to really kind of build up in terms of what is happening and how did Salahuddin even show up on the map, who was his predecessors, where he learned from, and so forth. All right. So today, inshallah ta'ala, it might be a short class, so there's a lot of information, and I'm not too sure how long it will last. We're going to go over a little bit, kind of backtracking what we talked about last week is Pope Urban's second speech. I'm actually going to highlight some words of what he actually said in his speech. We're going to talk a little bit about the First Crusades. Go into a little more detail. Last week, we talked about how they took over Jerusalem in 1099, but we didn't go into any detail, like what actually happened. So we're going to touch on that a little bit. The Muslim response to that siege of Jerusalem, right? So what did the Muslims do after that? You're going to find that that's why it's really important that we're doing this series, that a lot of this history, you almost could copy and paste of what's going on today, where the Muslim Ummah is not really responding. Where is the help? It's almost the same thing when we talk about this. That's why it's important for us to go over this. Then we're going to see the rise of an individual named Imad ad-Din az-Zanki, or Zengi, the Latin form of the Arabic word. It's actually with a kaf, a Zanki, but he wasn't Arab anyhow, so it wasn't like an Arab name. But how he rose up, and he's going to be one of the predecessors of Salahuddin, and he's going to actually be the one that helps have connections with Salahuddin's father, and we're going to see how that's going to play into it, and that's going to lead to this thing called the conquest of Edessa, which was one of the provinces of the Crusaders, the 4 provinces that they had, and how the Muslims were able to take that back, which will lead into the Second Crusade, which we probably won't start today, though, but at least we'll get somewhere. So just as a review, if you remember this now, what we're looking at here is the Seljuk Empire, which is a non-Arab empire that took over from the Abbasid Empire, and there was another Shia empire called the Fatimids are over here. There was another one called the Baidins, or I forgot their name, but they're also another Shia empire that the Seljuks were able to defeat. And even though Baghdad's controlled by the Abbasid Khalifa, he's more or less like there on paper. He really has not much control. They do have some representation in Spain, in Andalusia, where they also have control over there, but that's also kind of fading. Okay. We talked about how they're encroaching on the Constantinople, that the Caesar of Constantinople, of the Eastern Roman Empire, if you want to call him that, sends a message over to the Western Roman Empire to have their Pope, hey, can you come and help us? Because the Seljuks are approaching on us. And that's not going to be good for you, because once they take us down, they're going to come for you. And so that's what kind of sparks the whole Crusades, if you will, and also that the lands of Palestine is under Muslim control. This is, do you want to take a picture of that? Okay, go ahead. And then the Fatimids, we'll talk about them. There are a Shia empire, and we're going to see how they're more of an issue of stopping the Crusaders. They're actually causing more issues, and they're actually not really supporting the fight against the Crusaders. Okay. So I want to go a little bit over what Pope Urban II, which it wasn't his name, his true name, but nonetheless, what did he actually say in this Council of Clermont in France, where he initially tried to spark this crusade? Now, this wasn't his only address in Clermont. He went to other places and tried to spark up this whole crusade that we need to take back the lands of Palestine from the Muslims. But no one really gave him heed until this time here in 1095. So what did he actually say? So these are just pieces from what's mentioned that Dr. Salabi mentions in his book on Salahuddin Al-Ayyubi. So he says, "O race of Franks." The Franks were what would be modern day Germans, kind of like French, if you will. If you ever know the city called Frankfurt, right? There's a connection there. Our brother Johan here, so we have a German in the crowd, so we got to be careful what we say. But so the old race of Franks. So he's appealing to what? Their ethnicity. Okay. O race of Franks, the race chosen by the beloved God. Okay. Sounds a little similar when we talk about Zionism, right? Talk about the Jews and the chosen people, right? So he says, from the confines of Jerusalem and the city of Constantinople, a horrible tale has gone forth, namely that of an accursed race, like bad people. He's talking about the Muslims, okay? The Seljuks, the Fatimids, if you will. So look how he's already talking about as if they're like a lesser human being, if you will. Okay, a race utterly alienated from God. They have no connection to God. They're not part of this or anywhere close to our religion. Has transgressed and spread evil in that land, and the land of Christians in the east. Let the Holy Sepulchre, which was a church in Palestine, in Jerusalem, where Jesus supposedly was buried in the tomb and he rose. Okay, so it's called the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So let the Holy Sepulchre of the Holy Christ, our Lord, our Savior, which is possessed by unclean nations. Muslims are unclean. They don't have a concept of wudu, but anyhow, we do. Okay, especially incite you, and the holy places which you are treated with enormity and irrelevantly polluted with their filthiness. So see how he's demeaning them? That these are like animals. Very similar how like you see subhanAllah and how Netanyahu and the Israelis talk about the Palestinians. They're lesser humans, they're like animals. You could kill them. They're like, their life doesn't really matter. Since this land which you inhabit, he's talking about France, Germany, Italy. Since this land which you inhabit, shut in all sides by the sea. So he's saying that, you have this whole thing, it's all by the sea here. You can't expand. That's what he's trying to say. You might think about, hold on, do people live every single where? No, man, people only live where the water sources and so forth, right? But he said your cities are quite dense and populated. That's what he's trying to say. So since the land that you inhabit, shut in all sides by the sea, surrounded by mountains, can't grow things on mountains, right? And peaks, is too narrow for this large population. Nor does it abound in wealth, right? We don't have much money that we're getting from this land here. And it furnishes sacred, scarcely food enough for our cultivators. We don't have enough food. Jerusalem is a land fruitful above others, like other paradise of delights. The great city, which is situated in the center of the world, is calling for your help. Get up and save it. Undertake this journey willingly for the remission of your sins. So see a couple of things that he's talking about here, right? He's talking about the race. You have a better race. The Muslims are lesser people, right? Take them out. They're unclean. They're dirty, right? He's doing a religious appeal here. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where Jesus was, your Lord was, was buried and risen from. Of course, we don't believe that, but nonetheless, right? And then also the lands that you live in, it's like you can't grow anything. There's no wealth here. Go to a land of honey and milk, right? Not California, but Palestine, right? And they call it the Fertile Crescent because it was fertile. You could grow anything there, right? So that's why olive trees and produce is well known to be growing from there, right? And so he's appealing that you could go there, you'll get money. And so he's appealing on all different type of limbs here. And then we have the religious one, that your sins will be forgiven. Okay, of course, we have that on our deen also. If you fight and you're a martyr, then we know you get Jannah and so forth, right? But he's also saying that you're like almost like Hajj, right? You go there, the Pope is guaranteeing this, right? In Catholicism, they have this type of this type of idea. The Pope could grant stuff like that. So he's saying that your sins, you don't have to make Toba. We will take away your sins, if you will. So this is all the things that he's kind of trying to not brainwashing, but at least, advocating for getting people to go in this crusades. Why would someone leave their home and go and risk their life? So it has to be a good, benefit for them. So he talks about what was his decree? So we have the forgiveness of sins. Anyone who commits a punishable crime. So if you're a murderer, you're a thief, and you were caught, you could go on this holy war, and we will forgive you, right? So guess who the fighters are going to be? Like not the greatest people in the world. The people are not going to have the best mannerism. They're going to pillage. They're going to kill children. They're going to kill women because they're already this. But hey, that's a great way to get people to join army. Every culture kind of does this. You know what I mean? Here in America, we do have that, where, if you don't have money for college, go to the army. Well, we'll educate you too. You have this GI Bill, will get you a lot of money, right? And so forth, which is might be great for some people. They might be taking advantage of people who just can't go to college, and they have to get, thrown in some war that they don't want to be in, right? So the same thing here, right? So he's looking for people that, hey, if you're a murderer, we'll get you out of jail. We'll do this for you. Every participant in the campaign must wear the sign of the cross. So you have some type of special attention with Christianity. Must fulfill the promise to travel to the Jerusalem. If they change their mind, you'll be excommunicated. So you'll be we won't be Christian anymore. So the Pope could do something like that. Okay. Armies should meet in Constantinople. So that's Eastern Europe, right? So go there. We're all going to meet there, and then we're going to go down the Fertile Crescent, go down to Palestine. And that's what he's kind of advocating for. So this is Pope Urban II. Of course, he doesn't go on this. He gets everyone else to go on it. Okay. Which I will give a note to some of the kings back in those days. They actually went on something. Yeah, they didn't just sit in the White House or sit in their church and their palaces and say, "You guys go." But they actually rode horses and they fought too, which is really random. You don't see that.
That was actually long. I mean, in the European culture, it was until I think probably into the 19th century, where the leaders of the nation, whatever they were at that time, emperors, kings, did actually fight.
Yeah,
and died in
you would think
that only something very modern that people, like you say, they sit in their bunkers. Not even in the White House, they go into the bunker.
Right. Yeah.
Different.
I think it was a video by what's his name who made Fahrenheit 9/11. What was his name?
Michael Moore.
Michael Moore. He does this thing where he goes up to the Capitol Hill, and as the congressmen and senators are coming out, who just declared to have a war against Iraq and Afghanistan, he tries to get them to sign up their children to go on the war. Like, well, you got voted for them. Why don't you have your kids to go? And they walk away. They try to run. No one signs up their own children to go. But of course, they send all America's young kids that maybe not need money for college, but have to go through the military route. Maybe they want to go that route nonetheless. And so it's very interesting, that they don't know. Of course, the Prophet ﷺ was in many battles, fighting and, and so forth, right? Abu Bakr, Umar, and so forth. Okay. So the first Crusades. So what was the first Crusades is actually it's not like 1 year. It's not like a one-time event. It's this, we're talking about 4 years here it was going around, okay? Even can be me a little bit longer. It was multiple things. And I'm just highlighting some here. If I would go over every single battle, it would be like a 30-week class, to go over every single one. So it starts off in 1096, where 3,000 people called the People's Crusade. Normal farmers, normal people, just workers, said, "Hey, I get my sins taken away. I get all these type of special things. Let's go." Right? The Pope is saying this. He must be right. And guess what? They're not trained in military battle. Guess what? What happens to them? They get slaughtered. Women, kids, everyone, right? They're out there. They thought that this was a special thing. They followed the Pope, and guess what? They got turned down very, very easily. They get crushed. Okay. Then it was took into the prince and the knights of the real military people come and then help. I think that was like a year later. Then they come and actually join the crusade. And then you have them taking over Antioch, which is one of the big cities. It's modern day Turkey, but nonetheless was one of the big cities in the Seljuk Empire, even though it was also had Christians there nonetheless. The Crusaders take that over, right? They come down, they're able to defeat the Seljuk army. Seljuk army, like we mentioned last week, they are unaware that the Crusaders were even happening, that the Pope Urban II even mentioned that there's an army coming. Why? Because the Seljuk army, Muslims, go back to this thing again, because I know like you're using a lot of names here. They're fighting in between with the Abbasid Empire, which is Muslims fighting Muslims, unfortunately. And then the Fatimids over here. And even the Seljuk kings and their brothers and cousins, they don't like each other. It's just, they're fighting amongst who's going to be the next leader of Damascus and Aleppo and Halab and these places here. And so they're busy with internal strife that they don't even know that the Crusaders are coming down. Okay. So they're able to take Antioch very easily. Then in July 1099 is when they arrive down to Jerusalem. And when we talk about that, here's a little picture here, a little bit hard to see sometimes. So they're coming back. This is where Istanbul, Constantinople is at. They're going through there and they're coming down. This is Antioch. I don't know why they made this blue. It looked like the ocean, but it's not the ocean. They come to Antioch and they go through all the coast of what is modern day Syria, Lebanon, and take out these Beirut, Saida, Tyre, Accra, which is a city in Palestine, and go down until they get to Jaffa, which is, unfortunately, Tel Aviv now, but we still call it Jaffa nonetheless, right? And then they come into Jerusalem. So they're just mowing their way down here, taking out Muslim cities left and right. The Muslims don't have armies for some of these things. They come up and show up at their forts, and they just have to give in, or they're going to get pretty much, killed quite easily. So they look how quickly they move through here, and they get all the way down to Jerusalem. Okay, so that happens in 1099. It's an easy date to remember because it kind of stands out. 1099. We arrive at Jerusalem and besiege it. We're going to go over that battle in a bit. August 1099. The Crusaders defeat the Fatimid forces in Ascalon, which is one of the cities right above Gaza, right? Today, if you look at that area there, let me just let me guess taking pictures wrong way. Right. So that's not even a good picture. Where's my other one? Gosh, yeah. So Ascalon is probably over here. I thought they should have put it there, right? And then Gaza is this little area right here. Okay. And they don't go any further than that. They stop at Ascalon. They don't really, Gaza is not an area that they really take too much interest in. They really want to get over to the Egyptian side, because if you get to the Egyptian land, you have the Nile River. You have to think about how we don't really think about this. Back in the day, you think about Nile River, you're thinking about farming, you're thinking about produce. For them, that's money, right? So if they could take over the lands of Egypt, that'd be great. And they tried multiple times, and we're going to talk about that because that's how Salahuddin kind of shows up in the Egyptian Empire. Okay, so this is the route they take. Let's talk about the siege of Jerusalem, which 1099. So the Seljuks owned or controlled the Jerusalem, Palestine area. Then they lost it to the Fatimids. The Fatimids came out and they took over maybe about a year. They had it before the Crusaders came. So, that kind of caught them off guard. And if I could go back to this here, when we look here about the Seljuks and the Crusaders coming down here and mowing the way here, the Celtic Empire, I think they are established in like 1032 or 1037. They've only been an empire for like 65 years. So they're quite kids, if you will, in terms of like how empires are around. So they don't got their act together in terms of governors, and we got our armies here and there, and we're ready to go. So they're only been in power for about 60-something years. When the Crusaders come, they're not really equipped to take on a battle like that, if you will. Okay. So here, the Fatimids took over Jerusalem from the Seljuks a year before the attempt of the Crusaders came. The Fatimid governor of Jerusalem promised freedom. So he knew the Crusaders were coming. But like I said, they're only been in power for about a year, the Fatimids of Palestine, of Jerusalem. Yes, they were Shia, but nonetheless. So they didn't really have their act together in terms of armies and what they need to do, etc. And they knew that the Crusaders were just mowing their way down. And so they said, you know what? We're about to get taken over. They sent a letter to the Crusaders. Hey, guys, let's cut a deal. You guys could come and make pilgrimage to, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Do your pilgrimage here in Palestine, in Jerusalem. and just go back home. We don't want no war. Are the Crusaders really going to agree to that? No way. They left all the way from, Germany and France. So they're going to reject that immediately. So here that what did the leader of the Fatimans do at that time? He said, what I'm going to do? I'm going to poison all the wells around Jerusalem. So when their army comes, they won't have any water. Hopefully that will hold them back. So he does that, right? You have to think about water sources, how the army is going to, live. How are they going to do it? He also cut down trees. Why do you think he cut down trees for? I think the army can't walk around a tree. Right? Why do you think that they cut down trees? Right?
You can use it for like weaponry or to access the walls.
Exactly. Very good. You think battles back in those days are cities? Remember, you have to think about this with big walls around it. Okay, we're talking like 50-foot walls. And that's when another army comes, you just close your door up and shoot and catapult, and hopefully those guys run away. Okay. And if you're the invading army, you can't take like big ladders with you everywhere and walk through thousands of miles. So what are you going to do when you get to Jerusalem? You're going to look for trees and you're going to make battering rams. So you're just going to start cutting it down. You're going to try to make ladders. You're going to try to make these like towers where you can climb up and then jump over the wall. So what he does, he cuts down all the trees. So when the Crusaders come, they don't find what? Any wood. So they cannot make anything. Quite smart if you think about it. Okay. So that worked out very well. The Crusaders got there. They're like, what are we going to do? The wells are poisoned, and we don't have trees to get our weapons to batter this door down and get into the lands of Jerusalem. What happened after that is that we have Jaffa right here, which is modern day Tel Aviv, illegally, but nonetheless. So Jaffa here, the Romans were able to send down boats over here and bring wood to them. It sounds crazy. Like to bring, and this is still a long journey to carry wood all the way down to Jerusalem. I don't know how they did it. That's another story. So these boats came and gave them supplies, and they got their wood, and guess what? They started building. Okay. Jerusalem had a 10-foot thick. 10-foot thick is from this wall to like maybe where Brother John died. That's how thick the wall is. So if you hit it with a catapult, it's going to take a while to break, if you will. It's not like one of these dry walls in your house. You can run into it and you'll go right through it, if you will. Okay. And it was a 50-foot high wall. So that's 5 stories high. So how are you going to get over this thing, right? And then people are shooting arrows on you. Sometimes they'll throw hot oil and light it on fire, so it burns you. If you're trying to ram it, they did all type of things. They're trying to survive. 5-week siege of an army staying for 5 weeks, a whole month, which back in that day is not that bad, actually, honestly. And just sitting there with their tents, trying to hit this wall for 5 weeks, throwing things at it and trying to come in different angles. And you're just sitting in your town. Hopefully these guys don't break through. The Crusaders built 2 siege towers, which is, this is like a AI image of the Crusaders going up the wall here. But these are the siege towers. If you ever watch Kingdom of Heaven, like I don't really promote movies, but nonetheless, they have a scene like this where they build these towers, and then the Crusaders will go up, and that gets them 50 feet tall now, right? And so what they do, they just jump over. And then of course, they're made by wood. So what you do is, as for the Muslims inside, you throw hot oil on it and you hope you set it on fire. You put a fire on an arrow, you shoot it on it, and hopefully that burns that tower down. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And they're able to jump over it and knock this wall and burn down this wall till they get into the lands here in Palestine or Jerusalem at that time. So they're able to do that. They were able to build 2 towers, which is enough to get over it. The Muslims at that time, once the Crusaders come in, think about it's a bad analogy, but think about a burglar in someone's house. Like, what do? You go hide. Hopefully he doesn't find me, right? You go somewhere. And so they know they're breached. So the Muslims go and run where? Masjid Aqsa. Go into the masjid, make dua like you never made dua before. Also understand that there are Jews here also. Yeah, CNN lied to you. Muslim and Jews lived here for a very long time. They had no issues, okay? At least, relatively, they didn't have much great issues. So there's a lot of Jews that are in there, okay? They know that the Crusaders are not going to like them. One thing I forgot to mention, when the Crusaders started back in Germany and France area, and they're coming down to Constantinople, they went down the Rhine River and massacred Jews, left and right. they didn't like, Crusaders didn't like Jews. Like I'll say they hated Jews more than they hated Muslims. Okay, right? And so the Jews knew that they're in bad shape also. So they went to their synagogues and they started praying. Okay, Muslims went into their Masjid Aqsa. So of course, some could go in their houses or whatever. These Crusaders went door to door and chopped off heads, body parts, children, women. They don't care nothing, right? There was Christians in here. Now those are Eastern Roman or Eastern Orthodox Christians. Armenians to that, yeah, that are not aligned with the Western Roman Empire, the Catholics. So they don't see eye to eye. So the Christians were kind of scared also. There's a story that the Fatimid governor of Palestine, he told the Christians, get out, because we don't know if you're going to stab us in the back when the Crusaders come, or we don't know, because it happened before, where the Christians inside the city, when the Crusaders came, they worked out something with them and say, hey, we will open the door of the city, come into the back and do what you want, but just don't kill us, okay? Remember, the Christians had issues, right? So there's a notion that they told the Christians to leave the city. But another note, I mean, Christians and Jews and Muslims are living in Jerusalem with, even today, if you go to Palestine or Jerusalem, there is a Jewish quarters, there's a Muslim quarters, and there's a Christian quarters, right? They have their own section of land area where they have their businesses, and that's still kind of there in the old city, if you will, okay? Tens of thousands, this is hard to, this gives a lot of flashbacks what's going on in Gaza right now. I mean flashback, but current images, I should say. Tens of thousands of Muslims and Jews are just massacred, okay? Ibn Athir, who's one of the main, very popular Muslim historian, says around 70,000. Some people debate that and says 40,000. Nonetheless, that's a tremendous amount of people dying. You're talking about not in like what we're seeing in Gaza a whole year, which is still terrible, but we're talking about in a 2-day, 3-year span. 2 days or 1 or 2, 3 days, 40,000 people dead. And this is where you hear those stories about soldiers with blood coming up to the ankles and to their knees. Think about bodies over there. It's a small area. You're talking about Jerusalem. We're not talking about Palestine. We're just talking about just Jerusalem itself, okay? Bodies, and you're going to kill there, right? They don't bury them. They just keep on moving on, okay? And it's mentioned that when the Muslims went into Masjid Aqsa, they came in there and they killed them in Masjid Aqsa. And they said, the Crusaders said, you know what, we'll just kill them there. Blood goes all over the place. We'll just wash it out, and we're going to make this a church. They climbed up to the minaret, knocked off the moon, the crescent moon symbol, which is, not necessarily official symbol of Islam, but nonetheless. And they put a cross there, and they took that over. Now, with the Jews, remember I told you, they hated Jews more than they hated Muslims. The Jews were in their synagogues. So the Crusaders said, you know what, we could kill them in there. Their blood's going to be on the ground, but they're so dirty, we don't even want to wash their blood. That's how they thought. Okay, this is the stories that come out in the history books. So what do you think they did? They locked them all in and just burned the whole thing down. People inside there being burnt and not able to leave. These are the Crusaders. If you guys were with me with the Bani Israel, we talked about how the Bani Israel and how deviant they were and so forth. And, and of course, we know what's going on today in Gaza and Palestine in general, and how can it even happen in the modern day world. But this is something, if you were alive at that time, there's no Instagram, that people can't post what they're seeing, but if you would have saw it, you would have, what the heck is going on, right? And now we talk about Israelis, now we're talking about Christians, which is we don't really focus on that too much. I know that this type of history. And of course, hopefully everyone here in this room and online is smart enough to know that this is not the generalization of Christians. We all know that, right? There's great Christians and friendly Christians, etc. This was a section of Crusaders that had a whole different mentality of what they thought of who Muslims were and Jews, etc. Right? And so Godfrey, I can't pronounce the last name. I think it's a French name. There you go. I mean, that's why Johan's there. He's going to help me with these names. No, it's French. Yeah. I try to practice this every night before class, and I'm like, I got it. And then I come here and I blank out.
Those are a name for a soup. That's why I know.
Oh, the onion soup.
I know more from culinary than from French.
Is that the onion soup? I think it is.
No, it's a food you always like. Yeah, something.
Okay. I thought it was a French onion soup. There you go. Okay, that's one way. If you guys remember it that way, then hopefully it helps you, make you hungry at the same time. But no less. So Godfrey was made the new a governor. He didn't call himself king because he said that, which is interesting. He said, because Jesus, last crown was on his head was the one with thorns on it. I'm not going to put a crown on my head in the city where Jesus was killed, which is interesting. It had some spiritual benefit to it. So he said, I'm just going to be known as a governor. So it's interesting that he was somewhat humble in that sense, if you want to say that, that's humbleness, if you will. Okay. So they kill a massive amount. They take all the bodies out. There's stench in the city because people are dying and they don't clean up stuff. They throw them all out. They don't even bury them. They put them in pyramids, stack them on each other. The birds, and someone will come and do something like that. These were the first crusaders that came into the lands of Palestine, right? Extremely terrible what happened. They made Al-Aqsa Church and the Dome of Rock of a church. They changed that to there. And like I mentioned before, they just burned up all the, the synagogues. There is a story, though, that some Christians that were inside here, there's two different narrations, one that they were all kicked out. Some Christians were still in there. Remember, they're Eastern Orthodox. So these are Catholics coming in. So when the Crusaders saw them, they were scared, the Christians. And they said, where is this thing called the true cross, which is supposed to be the cross that Jesus himself was nailed upon? Of course, it's not our belief, guys, but this is what the Christian belief is. And they believe that brings like barakah, blessing. So they would want to get that cross. So they told them, where is the cross? We want it. The Eastern Christians said, we're like, no, we're not going to give it to you. You guys are crazy maniacs. We saw what you guys did. You guys are not going to honor the cross as it should be honored. They said, okay, if you're not going to do it, we're going to start killing your priests and then your bishops and your clergymen until someone gives it to us. And that's what they did. They started killing the Christians one by one until people said, it's over there. Go get it. And they finally give them the true cross, and they celebrated it, right? It was something that still kind of exists today, I believe, right? And they got that. So they were killing the Jews, Muslims, and these Christians. They didn't care about any of this, right? This is where the term holy war actually comes from, right? Not the word jihad. It's like, this is where they called it themselves, and these who they were, okay? What does the Muslims do after that? Okay, we're talking about what's going on in Gaza right now, what's going on, why are the Muslims in Saudi, where are the Muslims in Jordan, where are the Muslims in Turkey, Libya, Egypt, what are they doing, right? Same thing kind of here. The shock and fall of Jerusalem woke up a lot of the Muslims from their sleep, where there were internal fighting, and they're saying, you know what, we're focusing on each other, and guess what? We're getting killed and slaughtered because we're not focusing on what we should be focusing on. So what happens during that time is the Muslims turn to Baghdad, where the Abbasid Khalifa is, asking him for help. Send an army, right? You guys are out there. Let me go back to this map here. It kind of helps us understand what goes on, right? So all this area over here, all the armies here, look how big that land is. We're getting killed here. Did anyone see that? Did anyone even notice that? Why don't you guys send your armies there? They're like, I don't know, we got our own issues. That's kind of like your problem, right? Which is, some of the Muslim leaders in certain lands, that's what they said. It's a Palestinian problem. It's not our problem, right? And so that's a very problematic statement there. That's not an Islamic statement. All the Prophet said, Muslims get killed over there? That's Mecca. We're in Medina. That does not exist, right? Whether you're in California, Mexico, Indonesia, Turkey, Muslims, la ilaha illallah, right? And we're all brothers that way. So what are they going to do? Scholars started saying, we need to start focusing on the importance of jihad, of defending the lands, right? That, this concept of taking yourself up and defending your lands need to be reintroduced back to the people. They're too comfortable in their ways, and they're not focusing on what the enemies are coming. They're taking our lands. They're going to take over the whole kingdom pretty soon if it's not done. So they started writing a lot about this a little bit more, khutbahs on it, getting the people to realize that, hey, this is the time we're in right now. There's some time, alhamdulillah, you guys focus on your trade and your business and your families, but now it's a different time, right? Now that people are taking your land and killing your families, and now we need to focus on this. So there's a lot of more of this people coming back to their deen, which is very, very pertinent what's happening today, right? Practicing Islam as it should be practiced, right? Urging them to fight, right? This whole thing of standing up for justice, standing up for, those who are oppressed, if you will, in whatever capacity that you have. There was a scholar named Sulaimi who wrote a book, and he noticed what's happening in Andalusia. The Crusaders, they first started over there, if you will, if you think about it. They first started over there and killing Muslims and taking over the lands in Spain, and Andalusia, and then Sicily, which is like almost touching Italy, right? Which is let's go back here, which is like right here.
No, it's
Oh, sorry, over there, right there. Sorry, I will throw it out. Right, which was a Muslim, like the Normans, which are Germans also, that came down and took that land over there. He noticed that, and then he put it together. Then obviously, look what's happening in Syria. So talking about Tripoli, Antioch, right, Palestine, are all being taken over. Like, hey, there's a red light's flashing, but the Ummah is not paying attention to it. Okay, so he starts talking about unity of the Muslims. Seljuks, whatever you are, this one, Fatimids, whatever. We need to start working together. Like, we need to start fighting with each other, if you will. No more you're Jordanian, no more you're Saudi, no more that you're Palestinian, you're Muslim, which is very interesting because the cause that we still see today, especially all the Palestinian protests, is all about Palestine. It should be Palestine because the P word gets them angry, so we like to say it, right? And so it's good, free Palestine, free this, and it's Palestinian. We want to help the Palestinian people, but what it really is that we want to help the Muslim people. So when you make an Islamic banner over it, then the people in Bangladesh, Indonesia, everyone else is going to stand up, right? Alhamdulillah, Muslims understand that. We just like to use the Palestinian word because they're trying to erase it, so we're causing genocide. So we want to keep on using the word to make sure it stays, right? So there's a strategy to using the P word, right, in Palestine. But yes, but it should be the Islamic banner, not the Palestinian flag we need to be waving. But it should be the banner with La ilaha illallah on it. That's what it really should be, right? Yes, the banner itself is a protest. Sorry, the flag itself is a protest. The watermelon is a protest, all these things now, right? So that's the reason why we still use the flags, because it kind of makes them mad and angry because they're trying to take it away. But really, honestly, it's an Islamic thing that we really need to push, and we need to understand that ourselves. So he's talking about that. I don't care if you're Seljuk, I don't care if you're Abbasid. We need to make sure that you're on the floor and you understand what's going on, okay? So he wrote a book on this. He started urging this. Why am I bringing him up for? Because this sparks Salahuddin. If you're young and you grow up in this type of environment, things are going to happen. If you're young and you grow up in an environment where, all the families are quite rich and it's about your college degree, what degree are you going to be when you grow up? What do you want to be, an engineer? And that's all they taught you? Guess what? That's what you think life is. But if you say, like, are you going to memorize the Quran, right? When are you going to make Hajj? Like, do we talk to our children like that? We don't, right? We need both, believe me. We need engineers and we need smart people. Believe me, I'm an engineer myself, right? But so we understand the importance of secular knowledge. But that's what sparks Salahuddin. When he grows up, these are the people that kind of mold him. And that's the reason why I'm bringing it up. So I bring Dr. Salabi brings up in his book also. So he urges the Muslims to all come together, right? Take away your differences, to strive to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make tawbah, start practicing your religion, and also take up the steps of defending your lands in jihad. Okay. And I want to bring this hadith here because it's very pertinent to what we're going on today. And I wasn't there during the time of the Crusades, but I bet somebody mentioned this hadith, I would assume, sometime in the Membar to the people. And that's when the Prophet said, he said that people soon will summon the people would soon summon one another to attack you. They'll come in nations over you. Okay. And when eating, invite others to share their dishes. Just so you put food out and everyone rushes, right? Nobody waits in line. So that same thing he's saying is people are going to do that to rush upon you. And someone asked, Ya Rasulullah, will this be because we don't have much numbers? We're small in numbers? The Prophet said, no, you'll be like the numerous at that time, but you'll be like the foam in the sea. You blow it and it just goes away. There's a lot of it. Every ocean you see it all on the top of when it comes up to the coast, right? But it goes away very, very. It's very delicate. And Allah will take fear of you from the breasts of your enemies. Your enemy is not going to fear you. Well, the Muslims are coming. That's a joke. They'll end up fighting amongst each other. Oh, the Muslim countries are next to us. Watch, they won't even come, even though they have a lot of money. You'll see they won't even help you. See that today, right? We got Muslim countries all around Gaza. No one's scared that the Muslims are going to gather and take over that land. They know they're not going to happen, right? So they don't fear us at all. And the last intervention and put weaknesses in your heart, right? Someone asks, what is wahan? This word wahan, weakness. The Messenger of Allah said, the love of this world and the dislike of death, right? And that's what you see in the faces of the people in Palestine. that they're saying like, we die, alhamdulillah, we're martyrs. And we live, alhamdulillah, we're going to another day that we're going to fight for our land. Like that's how they grew up, and that's how their children grew up. Sad, but they understand this, right? Us, we might be a little bit different. We think about our cars, our houses, our granite tile at home, like whatever. It might be a little bit different. But we have to put in that mentality that I'm willing to risk to defend, against justice. Right? That's, a martyr in any civilization is the highest thing. In the U.S. Army, you get the Purple Heart if you martyred in the battlefield, right? You gave your life for a cause. That's what the Prophet's saying, that you don't love this world, but you love to defend and not worry about if your life is going to get taken because you're working to save the lands and people, if you will, right?
This word
Surah Luqman, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how the mother carries you in her stomach, wahan ala wahan, like weakness after weakness. It might be in other places though. This is not talking about in terms of battlefield or anything like this though. But that word is in the Quran. That's the only thing that's coming to my head right now. Yeah. All right. So nonetheless, obviously I put that picture there because 10 people in front of you, you still go. That's how the Muslim battles were. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they were always almost outnumbered by 3 in almost every war. It's kind of interesting. Battle of Badr, Battle of Uhud, Battle of Khandaq. But you don't leave the battlefield and you keep on moving forward, and they won the majority of them. This last part? Oh, this. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying that a time will come where all the nations will gather around you, come to fight you. And so the companions are asking the Prophet, is it because we're only 5 people, like we're small numbers, that they're going to come and just take us over? So the Prophet said, no, you guys are going to be in multiple number of numbers, but you'll be weak like the foam of the sea. It's like, yeah, right. And then he says, and Allah will take away the fear of the fear in the hearts of the enemy against you. So they won't fear you at all. They'll see you like Muslims. Oh, it's going to be easy day. They'll be like, oh, the Muslims are coming. Oh, I don't want to mess with them. See, they don't have that, right? They could go into Gaza and bomb the heck out of it. They know the Jordanians not going to do anything. They know the Saudis are not going to do anything. Egyptians are all going to stand there and watch. Turkey is not going to really do much. They might drop some food. We're not scared because we already bought them all their presents out already or something like that, right? Whatever, right? So he's saying that they have no fear, right, of you. Right? For example, you do something to Russia, you're like, it's not doing anything to Russia because I don't want to get bombed or anything. People are scared of that. A modern day example, if you will, right? Because Putin he's kind of crazy guy. Yeah, he'll just bomb the heck out of you, and then the UN will slap his hand, and guess what? He'll bomb you again tomorrow. So he said that, yeah, Allah will put, and the innovation is weakness. I put weakness in your heart. Like you're like, I don't know if I should participate. I don't want to do this. And they said, and that's why the companions asked, what is wahan? What is the innovation? What does that mean? He said, love of this world and dislike of death. That you love this world too much. When someone say, come out to the battlefield and go help those people. My house, my children, my car. Like, I don't want to risk my life. I have to travel over there. It's okay. Someone else will help them. So they're not willing to put out there and defend, right? So it's all about, a lot of it is about jihad. That you're not going to be out there to defend and against people who are being oppressed or anything like this, if you will.
There's a hadith where the Prophet lists the 6 very, very bad sins, and one of them is actually to turn your back if there's a battle,
yes,
and you walk away. It's like the same.
Yeah.
He lists you together like with worship other than God, other than Allah.
Yeah.
In the same 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Major
right
issue. So that's also kind of important to know.
And that's why martyrdom and being a shaheed and the reward of it is highly emphasized in Islam. Islam doesn't want anyone to ever be on a battlefield ever. If we can never do it, alhamdulillah, we would never do it. But unfortunately, we see what's going on in Gaza. Sometimes people are going to come and try to take your land, and you're like, why? Just leave me alone. And as Muslim, we don't just like, okay, let's go ahead, take it. I don't know, I don't want to fight. No, we have some type of dignity, and you should fight back, whether you are. So this is one of the things, and we see that today. That's why majority of the countries, like, if I go fight, my country might be put into harm. So you guys are going to get killed, and we're not going to do anything. That might be a good, as a president of another country, a good move. I don't know. But as a Muslim, like, you're watching what's going on. That's not a.
I always wondered that also actually you can use that almost like if someone comes to your house, right? And potentially threatens you and your family. I mean, in some US states, they almost encourage you to kill them, right? is that for Muslim also, if I have someone come to my house and I shoot the intruder, if he got a weapon, would be the same, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it should be-
everyone can make the decision, but you should try to defend your family.
That's right.
But if there are 10 guys on you, you're like, okay, and they're like robbing your house, and you're probably saying, you know what, probably I'm in a different, position now. But you should definitely put some type of effort. Sorry, what? You look like you're kind of a little confused.
Sounds like fate, because it's saying Allah is gonna take fear of you from someone's, from someone. I mean, it almost sounds like preordained, predestined, like we got to a point where, okay, now you're gonna die.
Well, it's not. Well, not just the problem I'm trying to say, because of your actions, this is what's going to happen. And they're like, well, why is that going to happen? Well, that's it. Because you love your wealth too much, and you're not willing to go out and risk your life, or just risk anything, right? Even your time, right? To go help someone out because that's going to take me away from my job and my business and my family. And this is more dear to me. You want me to come and volunteer at the masjid on Saturday? Oh, I mean, I'm busy. That's my only day off, right? So people do that. Forget about jihad. Like you can make an announcement, brothers, come on tonight. There's going to be we're going to help paint the masjid over, do something. People might say, well, that's my weekend, it's my only day off. And so even on a micro level, if you put it here, not like on standing on the battlefield, like how many of people would actually do something like that? You know what I mean? So that's another check.
So, or like in my mind, okay, like I grew up the way I grew up. So I'm like, dude, I'll go over there and fight. You know what I mean? But like in reality, I'm thinking, inshallah, what would be the right, like, okay, like somebody needed my help and they say, here's a ticket, dude, go over there. Like that's real. Like, like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? So learning how to gauge
yeah,
the proper way
right.
of not just being all like gung ho.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a
Like,
strategy, is definitely
there's a way
right.
to do
Yes,
it, right?
yes. And also the time and place. When this land is not a land of fighting anyone here, right? Right. And so our efforts might be different, more of a political level, awareness level, etc.
Yeah.
And if you're over there and you find yourself over there, your plans might be different, right? So I mean, it's really
I think about that a lot because I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, when I was young, I used to be like really my chest out. What's up, man? Let's go do this.
yeah.
Right. So, but I'm older now, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's a proper way of.
There's that's what you call wisdom.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what you call wisdom, right?
Explain that part that this lady was not able to understand, that in Battle of Badr and in Battle of Khandaq, there were so few Muslims.
Yeah, 100%.
But we had Allah's help.
Yeah. You still show up. You still show up.
Only
Yeah.
Bible, not so much.
Yeah.
In Khandaq.
Khandaq, she's saying Khandaq. Yeah. So, yeah.
Badr, there were few Muslims. And so, but there was Allah's help. So
Yeah.
here, because they were not practicing Muslims.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Yeah,
Interpreted.
definitely.
Like jihad is pretty much not new, right? It's a concept because of how you mentioned the Pope,
Okay.
how he said like, go take the land.
Yeah, that would be a very jihad thing. Yeah. That's why people think a lot of Christianity is like turn the other cheek type thing. But I mean, no, the Christians had a very, military time. We're only focusing on the Crusader part of it. You could go to other aspects sometimes, but they had that there too. So to jihad and like a Muslim thing, it's not just our books. I mean, there's definitely a lot of verses in the Bible, in the Old Testament. This thing called Haram, Harem. Look it up. It's a Jewish term of honestly taking a Gentile, which is anyone who's non-Jewish, women and children, and just chopping them into pieces and killing them, right? And so they have that time. I mean, I'm not saying that's a good example of what we should do. No, definitely not. But we're not like the only religion, only group that has an aspect of a defense, if you will, right? I mean, I would hope most people would, and not just So yeah, no, the Christians also had this, and this is from the Pope, and that's a great thing. This is not like, oh, there's some mercenaries that went crazy. This is coming from the leader of the church at the highest position. It's like the Grand Mufti or the Imam of the Sheikh of the religious director saying, go fight and risk your lives. You know what I mean? So that's. Yeah. But we do have the fighting too, but then but we also have mannerism and characteristic, like women and children, you
Yeah,
don't
no.
fight them. You don't chop that stuff. And you're going to see that. And that's what the whole thing about Salahuddin is that we haven't got to that part yet where he's letting go people left and right. You know, you're like, why? These people are fighting you. But his mannerism was so amazing, you know, especially when, of course, children and women and stuff like that. He's not maiming people just for fun and putting heads on sticks around the town. This is not the Islamic way to do it, right? You know, and so, like, you know, this is something where the Islam comes in and bring them type of mannerism, even in the battlefield. Yeah. Well, not just because they were Vikings, but I mean, that's where they're taught, you know, that's where they're taught. And unfortunately, whether that's from their scripture or their culture or something like that. So, I mean, I'd say you have Johan here, so you have to be careful what you say about him. Yeah.
Or even now, I mean, some of those gangs, I mean, they're towards here, but like even out of, I'm sorry, to offend anyone, like in the Central America, I mean, those.
Oh, yeah.
Every time they find policemen, with the head.
You know, Mexico, downtown LA, I mean, you know,
Honor killing, right?
Russia, multiple places have these people that, you know, are chopping people up left and right. And so that's the way they were taught. Maybe that to, you know, be boast and brag how great I am. And Shaitan's whispering in their ear and they're feeding, they're loving it, you know? And so they're just way off over here. And so you don't have hidayah, you don't have guidance, even in the battlefield about Islam, you'll do all type of crazy things. You know, it's not just about warfare. It's the way you treat people and this and that. It's just everywhere, you know, so. Okay, that clock in the back's a little fast. So I want to talk about Imad. I'm going to zoom up about 30 years now. So after the conquest of Jerusalem, that's 1099. We're going to move up into this individual called Imad ad-Din Zangi, or Zanki with a kaf. In Arabic, we say Zanki. The Latin way of calling it is Zangi.
Almost looks Asian, Zangi.
It is. They're the Central Asian. You know, they're not Arabs at all. So yeah, Seljuk. Even though it becomes
the dude from Kazakhstan or
Uzbekistan area.
yeah.
Yeah. Even like Afghanistan, those areas there, they're kind of looking very kind of Asian but not like total Asian. You know what I mean? So we had a picture of that last week, right? So Imad ad-Din Zangi, why am I bringing him up for? Is that this is where Salahuddin kind of grows up in. Okay, Imad ad-Din Zangi has a connection with Salahuddin's father. His name's Ayyub, right? And this is where the connection kind of comes in a little bit. So that's why I want to go to him. Another thing, I want to put a little preface here. Anytime we talk about these other Muslim leaders, Imad ad-Din, and you're going to hear another person named Nuruddin, and all these other type of, even though they're Muslim, doesn't mean that they're the most righteous people in the world. Yes, they're Muslim, and that's just like, you get a Muslim stamp. But they're not prophets. They don't ever, I'm saying, like, they went into war and they just didn't massacre anyone. They have their faults too, right? But overall, they had some good characteristics and so forth. So let's kind of preface that. So Imad ad-Din, he's going to end up being the leader of the Zanki or Zanji or, you know, dynasty. Why is that important for it? Because that comes under the Seljuks. He's already under the Seljuks, okay? But he has his own kind of like dynasty that's evolving under the Seljuks. So the Seljuks are kind of breaking apart. And this is where Salahuddin comes in. Even though he's not part of the Zanki family, right? He's from the Ayyub family, which is Kurdish. But he grows up with them. He ends up fighting them. But anyhow, we'll talk about that. You know, it's always interesting, right? So he helped the Seljuks, this guy Imad ad-Din Zanki, to take control of Baghdad from the Abbasid Khalifa. So the Abbasids are going down. Okay, led a important counterattack against the Crusaders, and that is the conquest of what is it called again? How do you pronounce his name? Edessa. Gosh, I'm just losing my words here. Okay, and we're going to talk about that. He was appointed as the Emir. Remember, he's underneath the Seljuks extent of the Emir of Mosul, which is in Iraq. Okay, and that's where he kind of starts this Zangi dynasty from there. Okay, 1131, the Seljuk ruler of Baghdad dies, so he goes down and he wants to expand his empire, and that Seljuk ruler, his sons are fighting amongst each other, so no one's really taking over Baghdad. Baghdad's a very big place. Okay, so he tries to go down there and tries to take that area over. Okay, but that leader that passed away from Baghdad, his troops are still there. They fight him off. They almost trap him. But who comes to his help is a person named Najm ad-Din Ayyub, which is Salahuddin's father. A little note here. This Najm ad-Din, Imad ad-Din, these are all titles, especially those from the Central Asia. They love putting these titles on them, right? So Imad ad-Din, the word Din, Din in religion. Imad means like the foundation, like a pillar, the pillar of the Deen. Okay. And Najm ad-Din means star. So like the star of the religion. I know it doesn't translate the greatest in English, right? Salahuddin is like the victory of the religion, right? Salah, right? Victory. If you hayla salah, hayla al-falah, right? So this is like he's like the victory of the which he was if you think about it. So it's a good title for him, right? It makes sense. So that's not their names; they're all titles. So if you want to pick a title for this class, we'll start calling you with that if you like. Next week you pick one, wear it on your shirt, and you could be some type of dean. If you so think you have a whole week to think out a good creative one. All right. So he escapes with Najm ad-Din Ayyub, who is the father of Salahuddin. He is a governor of a nearby city called Tariq, which is another city in Iraq. Comes over and helps him. For that reason, I didn't really get to find out why exactly he came over there, and helped him to take him out of that city and save him. That's going to be crucial later on, because when Imad ad-Din rises up, he remembers him and kind of takes him with him. And that's when Salahuddin grows up. Wow, there's some great leaders in front of me. Look what they're doing. And guess what? You're not thinking about video games all the time. You're thinking about, hey, look what's going on in the world, right? So who you surround yourself with is who your children surround yourself with is a big impact on them, right? So he has this thing of like, he sees this nonsense going on and that everyone's fighting each other. He wants to bring an Islamic front together. He wants to unite the Islamic movements, and he wants to crush the Crusaders. He understands this. Even though he wants to bring the Muslims together, him himself ends up fighting against other Muslim leaders. This is, like I said, they're not prophets, right? So remember this. These are the county of Edessa, the principalities of the Crusaders. After they took Jerusalem, they made these 4 areas here. The county of Edessa, the principality of Antioch, the county of Tripoli, which is it's in modern day Lebanon, up close to the border of Syria. There's also Tripoli in Libya, but we're not talking about that right now. And then, of course, the kingdom of Jerusalem. So these are the 4. And you can see how the Crusaders, they're kind of smart what they did. They put them all on the coast. Why? Because nothing really happened here. You guys remember from the Bani Israel series? Like everyone had to go around because this is desert and dry area. No one really cared about that land too much. Also, you have water access here. So there's a Byzantine Empire there. So if you need resources, guess what? Boats come, they bring food for you, they bring water for you, and you help out. So because you don't want to go through this way. But this is where the Muslims are at. So they're gonna be a buffer zone between you and these new Catholic states, right? And also, if you're going to be attacked, you're going to get attacked by what? One way. Except for one principality. And which one was that one? Edessa. So Edessa has this way, and this way. And that is what's going to mess them up, right? Because they have to make sure they look and see if the Muslims are coming this way or this way to protect them. There's only one way here for the other places, okay? Also, Edessa is very important because if any army that's coming from Europe, like up here, Italy and Germany, they have to come down to Edessa and then go all the way to Palestine. If you're able to conquer Edessa, guess what? You just put a big stop sign from people coming down. And guess what? You're going to starve out these Crusaders here unless they come through waterways. Okay. So guess what Imad ad-Din thinking about? How do I take down this area? If I do that, hey, that will lead hopefully to the fall of everyone else. Right? He's not thinking about his palaces and his money. Maybe he was, like I said, but nonetheless, he's thinking about this, what I could do here. I believe Dr. Siddiqui doesn't have tafsir today, so I'm going to go over 10 minutes if you don't mind. Okay. The conquest of Edessa. So he's able to conquer Edessa in 1144. Remember, the Crusaders took over Jerusalem in 1099. So this is like 45 years later. Okay. Salahuddin? No. So 1099 is when the Crusaders took over Palestine. This is Imad ad-Din. Salahuddin's a little baby right now. He was born in 1137. So he's Imad ad-Din, this one here. Yeah, Zangi. First name is Zangi. Zanki. Okay. Salahuddin is, I put it on the first slide, so I don't remember. Yeah, 1137. Okay. So he dies in 1193, dies at the age of 56 years old. But so 1137 when he was born. So when we talk about this here,
think they got a little picture of what he would look like?
yeah, I saw some online. I really doubt, I don't know. They just saw make him kind of like, slanted eyes and stuff. I don't know if he really was like that. And I don't think people,
Kurdish.
yeah, Kurdish. So I don't know. So 1137. So he's about what, 7 years old at this time, Edessa was the first line of defense of the Crusaders. We just talked about that, blocking the Muslims' transportation from between Syria, Asia Minor, Iraq, and Mesopotamia. So that was like the blockage of there. In Edessa, lacked harmony of its inhabitants because they had Eastern Christians, which is the Armenians. Remember, they don't like the Catholics. Okay, and then they have the Western Crusaders in there. So you got the Crusaders who are Catholic, and then you have the Eastern Orthodox. They're both Christians, but they kind of like, remember the Great Schism? We didn't like each other, okay? And they're living together, okay? And so that's causing some friction there, okay? There's like, this is supposed to be like one of the walls of Edessa. You see the people actually, what they do, they dig underneath the wall, because the wall is 50 feet big. So if you could dig under the wall and shake its foundation, then hopefully it falls. So they went to all different type of ways just to get that wall down, right? So these are actually showing people underneath there. Well, sometimes the defending army will go underneath there, or the attacking army will go under and try to weaken the wall by digging holes underneath it. Imad ad-Din took his army to a nearby land to trick the Crusaders that he's not coming. So he actually went to an area out here. So he's coming from Mosul, which is like Iraq over here, somewhere around here. And then he goes, not to go to Edessa, but he goes out here. The leader in Edessa at that time, I put his name here, hopefully I did, because I'm not going to remember it. Jocelyn. I know, sounds like a woman's name. Back in the day, it was a guy's name. I don't know how things work, but hey, it's like Kelsey and, Taylor. You don't know if the guy or girl, Anyhow, so Jocelyn, he was a guy, okay? So Jocelyn, he was more in the dunya, even though he's a crusader. When he heard that Imad ad-Din was going away from Edessa, he said, let me go to the Euphrates and live life and eat some food and women, etc. And I don't need to worry about the city. Someone else would take care of it. I want to relax. Okay. So when Imad ad-Din heard that Jocelyn left Edessa, right, and he went with his troops or went with his entourage, that was the key to book it to Edessa and try to take them over. So he mobilized the Muslims in the land. He sent a letter, all the Muslims, come, let's take this down. Alhamdulillah, some of them responded and fought with him, right? And he went over there, offered the people, hey, surrender and leave, we won't harm you. Of course, they didn't do that. They laid siege to Edessa for 1 month. Not too bad, nonetheless. 1 month outside the doors, remember? And just pounding it with rocks, trying to break their wall until they finally got in, okay? The Muslims surrounded from all sides. They finally get into Edessa. The fortress walls collapse. The bishop just gives up. He said, here's the key to the city. Leave us alone, okay? And then he ordered all the people to leave the city intact. Don't pillage the city, because we're going to be living in it now. So it don't make no sense if you're going to break down walls. Keep it how it is. The Christians that are there, so the two different stories. The Crusaders, it's a story that he burnt down all their churches, which usually you don't do. But he knew that they were a foreign enemy in that land. The Eastern Orthodox churches he left, which was the Armenians, because they are the original inhabitants of the land. So he wants to keep them there, if you will. Yeah, just it's good. You get good in good terms with them. They know the land very well. So other guys, they're crusaders, what we're going to say, right? Remember what they did in Jerusalem. We don't forget things, you know what I mean? So they chopped off a lot of people. So they need to get slapped on the hand back a little bit, okay? So he destroyed the Catholic churches, and this was the first major of the defeat for the Crusaders since they started their principalities, starting off in 1097, right? That this was the first one. When that word goes out to the Pope, now there's a new Pope there now, Pope Urban II is gone, he calls for a second crusade. That we need to make sure and stop the Muslims now, because once they take Edessa, then guess what? They're going to go down really quick. We need to assemble another army and go over there quickly and try to stop them. And we'll talk about the next crusade, the second crusade, which happens from 1147, 3 years later. And we'll go for 2 years, and how that crusade gets shut down very, very quickly from the Muslims. Okay. Salahuddin is going to show up a little bit more on the third crusade. Okay, and that's what we're talking about there. So we'll leave it here at Edessa. Muslims again. So now this one is gone now. This is back in Muslims' land here. There's this one, these three that are still there. And the Muslims are trying to work their way to go down here. They're going to try to get Aleppo. They're going to try to get Damascus. And we'll talk about what they do at Aleppo and what they do at Damascus to try to get it from the Crusaders. So there's like some good stories there. Imad ad-Din, he only lives one more year after the conquest of Edessa. Like I said, remember, they're not prophets. Imad ad-Din used to like alcohol a little bit too much. He's a Muslim, but everyone has their faults. Some have major faults. He's a king nonetheless. So the story is 1 year later, he wakes up, he has a slave servant that's there. He wakes up at nighttime, he sees his servant drinking from his goblet, his cup. You don't drink from the king's cup. Okay. So he told the servant, he's sleepy. He said, when I wake up, I'm going to discipline you. Why are you drinking from my cup for? He goes back to sleep. You don't tell that to your servant that I'm going to discipline you and go back to sleep. What's the servant going to do? Got killed. So lesson, hopefully you guys all learn that. If it ever happens to you, if you ever become a king and everyone drinks from your cup, you're going to tell someone, make sure you discipline them right there. You don't have to kill them. You can put them, you can slap them in the hand. You can do something else to them. So there goes Imad ad-Din. Yeah. So also alcohol was not a good thing also. So that's another thing I led to that also. So he's gone after 1 year, but he does have his sons that come into it, which is Nur ad-Din he has, which is also going to be the leader in Damascus. And then I think it's Salih ad-Din, which is his other son that's going to lead in Iraq. And this is where Salahuddin is going to become good friends with both of them, especially Nur ad-Din. And that's where he's going to rise up later on. So we will talk about the Second Crusade next Sunday, inshallah ta'ala, and roll into. We're finally going to introduce Salahuddin next week. I know you've been waiting. I know it's a whole thing about Salahuddin, but now you understand why we did this for us, so you can build him where he comes. So next week we will introduce Salahuddin, go a little bit about where he was born, or his upbringing. His real ambitions was to become an Islamic scholar. He wanted to study, but then he got pulled into this political thing. He really didn't think anything of it, but that was a good move for him. Alhamdulillah. I'm glad that it worked out him that way. So, but he loved the deen, loved studying, and that's the path that he was going on. So a little bit of a prelude of what's going to happen. Questions or comments before we? Yeah.
We had the trenches made only in the Battle of
Conduct.
Khandaq. They didn't use this strategy in any of the other battles.
No, because they do have these things here. If you look here, they do have a trench before the wall. So it's hard because the invading army has to go down, and guess what? You're like, you get stuck there. They call this moats, right? I think call it moat, right? So if you go down here, guess what? You can't get up. And a lot of times they'll fill it up with water. So if you want to, the army wants to come down here, shoot arrows up there, you're almost going to die because you can't get your tank up there, or not tank, sorry, catapults or anything. So they have to bring, not only you have to ram the wall, you have to bring a bridge with you also, right? So think about if you had a city, if you had a house, and forget about 911 or anyone who's going to come to help you, what are you going to do, right? You're going to try to, create a big wall around you, put a ditch in front of it. If you could put, whatever, anything else around it, a bunch of bushes and roses and trees to poke people, whatever you could do, cactuses, you would do it, right? So they have these up there. These are kind of like the trenches they did. Majority of anytime they go to a city, back in the day, I want you to think about it, every city, and I mentioned this before, had a wall around it. You go to Garden Grove, it's a wall. Westminster had a wall because they don't want anyone to come in there. And if you're going to trade, they'll open the door and see who you are, come in, trade, no weapons, go ahead. If they see an army, guess what? You lock it up and you defend, or you go meet the army before they come. Most people just stayed in there because they got caught by surprise most of the time, or they didn't have an army ready. And so 50-foot wall is pretty big, that's what, and people lay siege to this. Like you talk about the county of Tripoli, they laid siege to this for 6 years. I think one of the historians were saying that this might be the longest ever in the world laying siege to a city for 6 years until they finally broke through. That's 6 months, 6 years. That's what happens. That you take their water away from this that goes into the city and you poison it or you block it, right? And so the people inside are going to starve, they're going to have to give up, or they're getting tunnels from underneath, right? And so they have all type of strategy. You have to think about warfare in this time is different than warfare in today's world. Some similarities, but not the same. All right, anyhow. All right. Anything else? Well, you had a question? Okay, I'll come to you after the inshallah talk. We'll make dua inshallah at the end. We ask Allah ya Rahman ar-Rahim. Anta salam wa minka salam tabarakta ya dhul jalali ikram. Allahumma salli wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya Rahman ar-Rahim ya Ghafoor. We ask you to forgive us for our wrongdoings. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you to take away the love of this world from our hearts and not the fear of death, ya Kareem ya Rabbil Alameen. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make us of those who free and help our Muslims in need, ya Kareem ya Rabbil Alameen. Help our brothers and sisters that are oppressed wherever they are in the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you for your Jannah, forgive us for our wrongdoings, and make this class a proof for us in Yawm al-Qiyamah and not a proof against us. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun al-mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Barakallahu feek. May Allah bless all of you. We will see you next.
Thank you, brother.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome.
On the